guys? Welcome to the 706 podcast, and welcome to our episode on the Book of Henry, aka what happens when you don't pick Mishima, when you get two chances. This is what happens, folks. All right, I'm joined by three esteemed guests this week. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Kirk, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. My name's Kirk. I'm an avid foosball player, recently divorced. Tony's mom is taking it pretty hard, but we're moving forward. We only have two children, so Tony has two stepchildren, or two stepsisters. Anyways, go ahead.
I'm not really keeping this. I'm not sure what this situation is exactly. I'm hard time keeping this straight. Anthony?
Oh, wait. They're half-sisters. See, I get it confused, too. Anyways,
I
you
hope
all
you can
get
follow
straightened
the
out in
movie.
family court.
Anthony?
Anthony, and in my spare time, I read the Toledo Law Review. Is that what your shirt says?
Well, I'm not in it, so you're missing out. And Connor?
And I'm Connor. I'm the sensitive one.
That's right. We've all laid out our identities, and I'm just kind of the default, the host, the head honcho, whatever you want to call it, Yeah, so today we're doing, as I said, The Book of Henry, which is a movie from 2017, directed by Colin Trevorrow and written by my bad, guys.
Greg Hurwitz.
Greg Hurwitz, thank you. That was embarrassing.
Also the most.
Toledo Law Review right there.
That's why they didn't publish.
known
They asked me in an interview, who wrote the Book of Henry? And I was stumped. I didn't have it, so my bad. So yeah, so this is a movie that I'm not sure what genre you would call it. It's sort of a family movie, I guess. And it was a failure. It was a failure both critically and commercially when it came out. And it got kind of an instant notoriety for being a very kind of tonally ersatz, confused, jarring film. And I saw it in the theater because I had heard about it and I was curious, and it really made an impression on me. It really stuck with me. And I really wanted to show these guys and kind of get their take on what they thought of this movie. So I think this is one where I want to start with Kirk. So Kirk, lay it on me. How did you feel about the Book of Henry?
You want to start with me?
I sure do.
Okay. So I'm going to name three things, little trivia. The entire VOD library of the Joe Rogan Experience, a live birth, and an ISIS beheading. What do these things have in common? I would rather watch all three than rewatch the Book of Henry. This movie is colossal failure and dumpster trash. And if it weren't for, do you want to give a synopsis, Tony? I mean, it's kind of hard to
It's hard to summarize, isn't it? It's sort of a movie about a single mom raising two sons, one of whom, in kind of a shocking second act twist, dies suddenly of brain cancer. And the son leaves a notebook, the titular Book of Henry, leaving him with the mother with instructions how to kill the neighbor who is molesting his stepdaughter.
Molesting or abusing? I didn't understand.
I think it's implied to be sexual abuse. We don't
Really?
see what he's doing.
I think it's both. I mean, the bruises, and he throws her up against a wall or something at the store, right?
No, that
First
wasn't
is implied to just
that
be
wasn't him.
physical
That was just a
abuse.
random guy.
It was a random
Yeah,
guy.
it's a random
Okay,
couple.
sorry.
I never saw any inferences to sexual abuse, so I'm not sure. And I didn't read it that way. I just read it as purely physical, verbal, psychological abuse. But, I guess it's up for interpretation.
Either way, he deserves
Yeah.
to die.
It's bad, folks. Don't do it. Either kind.
Anyways, so this movie is a ripoff of Gilmore Girls in a lot of ways, which is kind of strange. If you've ever seen Gilmore Girls, there's this kind of precocious, soft-spoken, overachieving child who speaks in, monotone and is, kind of cool though, and who's being raised by a single mother who maybe drinks a little too much and tells her child to live a little. They live in the Northeast, and then all of a sudden the daughter in Gilmore Girls gets a brain tumor, and she instructs her mother to go kill their neighbor because she thinks they're abusing their stepsister or stepdaughter. Oh wait, no, that was fan fiction. This is just an abomination. I don't know how else to say it. There are bad movies like Troll 2. Troll 2 is like a B movie, right? This is not a B movie. This is A movie, production, casting, cinematography. There's a score even. This I think this has an original score. That brings it even lower down my list because the biggest problem with this movie is the writing. I mean, it's directed all right. The acting is, I think Naomi Watts is trying to work with what she's given, but at the same time, it feels a little, I can't tell if it's the writing or her. Either way, she's an Academy Award nominee. She's all right. The writing, and it's written by this guy, Greg Hurwitz. You want to hear what he was in? He was in The Rise of Jordan Peterson, a documentary from 2019. He was also in a Reuben Report episode called Can the Democrats Be Saved? He's written 5 things. He's written for V, the TV series, Queen of the South, and then 2 things that have not come out yet.
Well, he's mainly a novelist, and apparently this script had been in his drawer for like 20 years before it was actually picked up to be made. So he would have written it like in his early 20s. Okay.
That makes sense. It makes sense. Tony, I would rather watch your Zookeeper or Beekeeper, whatever it was. So this movie, the reason it fails is because it doesn't know what it is, like Tony alluded to in the beginning. Who is this movie for? I asked this question in our Road to Perdition episode. Who is this movie for? Who is this movie for? It's not for children. Nope. I don't think. It's not for people who like suspense movies because it's not very suspenseful. I mean, I'd rather watch like Disturbia, that stupid bullshit movie, if you remember, with Shia LaBeouf, than this. And I guess it's for like moms who drink a couple glasses of wine while they're winding down at night. Like, I think that's the target audience. But even then, wouldn't they just be distracted by the absurdity of it all? There's 2 big problems with the writing. The main character, Henry, is an alien. He's not a real person. There's no fucking well-adjusted 11-year-old that does their mom's taxes and, files for, I don't know what else he's doing. He's playing the stock market like he's Gordon Gekko from a payphone, by the way. That's a nice touch in 2017. And 2, Naomi Watts, the character, it's ironic that she would go after Dean Norris's character for child abuse when she's definitely neglectful. I mean, she sends her son to school with all desserts for, what does she want her son to get diabetes? She's a horrible mother. What the fuck is going on with this role reversal? And so that's where I think you lose people, is because it's not relatable in any sense of the word. It's so unrealistic that it's farcical, but then the movie tries to like pull on your heartstrings and there's nothing there. And I just feel like I'm watching like an Aliens rendition of a Lifetime movie, not understanding how family systems work on this planet. And, it throws me off. I think the one redeeming factor is that she does not end up killing Dean Norris at the end. If she killed him because her son posthumously coerced her into taking out, Western vengeance on her neighbor, I would say this was the worst movie of all time. But because she didn't end up killing him and she's like, you're just a child, then, and then she all of a sudden realized, oh, I can go to the media. This isn't a closed system. We don't live in fucking, I don't know, Chattahoochee, Georgia. Like, we can figure this out. There's alternative pathways. So anyways, I have more to say, but that was very cathartic. I know Tony was expecting that. I'm sure my fellow co-host will be a little more soft-spoken, but I just had to let that out.
All right, guys. That's pretty much what I expected. How about Connor? What did you think of this movie?
I think Kirk said it very well. Like a Lifetime movie made by an alien. This is a movie that just defies all expectation and ability to comprehend it. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, really, because of its sort of completely straight tone, right? Where while we're watching Naomi Watts, about to take a shot, from a sniper rifle on Dean Norris, we're also seeing a kid like whose whole like talent show routine is like burping. And it's just like, there's all these weird kind of pure kind of, maybe not Lifetime film, but just kind of family film moments, throughout, and it just slowly begins to be more and more punctuated by this absurd and horrifying idea of this murder plot. So this kind of vigilante murder plot that is just played completely straight, with a slight bit of like, this is a little odd, Anyway, it's crazy, and it did not disappoint in that respect. I went in completely blind.
Yes.
And it just floored me with the second act twist and the fact that it goes even further. So you're waiting, okay, well, wow, Henry's really dead. You think you can figure out what's going on. Okay, this is going to be an after-school special about abuse, and maybe we'll learn that that Dean Norris is an alcoholic, and we'll learn what that is, and we'll all learn a lesson about being better to each other and what to do in these kinds of situations, with some boy genius hijinks thrown in for good measure. But no, it is not that. They had to let Henry die, and had to have this whole plot of not only are kind of living past him or living beyond him, living beyond his loss, but also, this murder plot. I mean, it's insane. It's totally insane. I guess there's not a whole lot I can say. I can fasten on some fun, details, but I enjoyed watching it, for sure. But it's quite an enigma.
Okay, and Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kirk and Connor hit on it. And look, I mean, contrary to what Kirk thinks, I don't go into every movie looking to be the opposite. Everyone here, but yeah, it's not a great movie. I will give it points as I think it's one of the most creative and like dare-taking movies, American movies I've seen in a long time. I give it a lot of points for that, and I think Kirk is right. I think there's two options the movie should have gone into. It's like on one end, it should have been the edgiest movie for 12-year-old boys like that's ever existed, or it should have been a really deep, dark black comedy about being like a neglectful, awful parent. It doesn't go. I have weird structure of in between, but I think like Connor was saying, it's an enjoyable movie. I don't think I'll ever see it again, and as much as I wanted to be the person who's like, there's something redeeming about the Book of Henry, I don't know if it's there. But I think everyone else pretty much gave my initial impressions, but I will stop. Let me just read very quickly an Armand White sentence that really summed up the movie for me, and really will pull Kirk's lines into suspicion. All right, real quick. So, the Book of Henry is a nightmarish spectacle that boasts about its principles, which are the ones taken for granted in liberal pop culture. Henry devises his violent solution when the usual methods of social redress prove unsatisfactory. He writes and diagrams the killings in a little red notebook, then tape records, step by step, Rube Goldberg-like, instructions for his mother to carry out the deed. Henry's Book of Reprisal takes on a weird sanctity, as if it was a progressive's Bible, an Antifa email, perhaps, or Mao's Little Red Manifesto. Henry's sentimental text is the basis for a millennial's version of the old Charles Bronson movie's Death Wish, but filtered through a liberal hogwash. So, just wanted to throw that out there.
Good old A and W.
Wow.
Wait, which party supports capital punishment? I feel like people are smart enough, perspicacious enough to understand that Dean Norris doesn't deserve to die. Is that just me? Also,
I don't know.
I think there are a lot of people who would say he deserves to die.
I think the fact that he kills himself in the end is basically that, yes, he does deserve to die.
I think if he is a child molester, as I interpret it, and I think most people do. I haven't done a survey, but I think that's what's implied here. A lot of people would say he deserves to die. Doesn't make that right or wrong, but I don't think
I wouldn't personally say he is, but I think the movie believes he is.
No,
I think that. I'm saying that's a very common opinion. Like that's
I think Tony. I think that's one moral line that pushes people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why that's what it is in the movie.
But among the left, though, I mean, we don't even
talk to. People aren't like. I don't know.
No, he's referring to why would Armand White try to make this into a kind of a political thing?
Well,
I think it's right.
He's
It's
swinging
the
for
sort
the
of,
fences. I mean,
but
that's
it's the
what he
Red
does.
Notebook. It's about
That's funny.
killing the white police officer, right?
Yeah.
Who's also a horrible child molester.
I have to say, no, can I say one quick thing?
Of course, yeah.
At the end, when Dean Norris is, for those of you who don't watch the movie,
shame on you, first of all.
great. Well, okay, fair enough. He's finally found out, and the police, sirens are buzzing, and he's in his house, and then it fades to a window shot. We can't see anything, and then you hear a pop, and you see a flash of light. And I paused the movie, and I said out loud, "What the fuck?" Because, that's the first time it's ever happened watching a movie for this podcast. I thought that was the least warranted suicide I've ever seen in a movie in my entire life.
Well, it's obviously a manipulative screenwriting device of he still has to die. We still have to kill him.
Also, you gotta stay for after the credits when he actually walks out of the house.
We need to sate the audience's bloodlust we spent the whole movie cultivating, but keep Ryan Watts' hands clean.
But it's just I guess I'm being too rational, but he probably wouldn't even have gone to prison. I don't know what the body of evidence was against him, but if he did, he'd be 5 to 10. Brought down to 3 years.
You know what they pulled? I think we're getting a little far afield here. I mean, yes. I don't know.
Also that the abuse is treated as something that's mysterious, so we never really completely get a full kind of reveal of it.
But also, we get this whole thing about how the reason nothing's happened is because he has so many friends in the system. His brother-in-law or whatever it is
his
the
brother,
social
who's the
worker.
head of Child Protective Services.
Yeah, he's friends with the principal or something. So all of a sudden, her one word is now going to change the whole system he knows.
The principal's I was at a dinner party with him once. He can't be a child molester. But
my point with the suicide was that this movie is just this cascading waterfall of these moments,
absolutely.
And it does make for some shock. It's a shocking movie in that way.
Yeah.
And there is some element of that can be enjoyable in a certain way. You can hate watch it. So. Yeah,
I mean, I think so. Why I'll say I love this movie. I love this movie, and I this is the reason I love it is because it's a movie that really confronts us with what is a good movie? What is a good movie? Because everything Kirk said is correct. I can't refute these points. I mean, I can try some of them I can maybe, but not most of them. This isn't a good movie in any conventional way. The directing is just hack. It's hack directing. It's there's so many just lame moments at the beginning of the movie when Henry is giving his little speech, and then the bell rings right when it ends. The thing you've seen on a million TV shows and movies your whole life. Right. The scene where the brother brings the candy to school and says, "Want to trade for fruit?" and everyone just grabs it right away. That can's just shoot in the camera. Just really trite, really hack moments that have lost any semblance of their original emotional valence, right? And then the writing is, of course, this is the sort of thing you would write as a exercise, a creative exercise. It's almost like free association. You'd be and then this happens, and then this happens, with no real thought for the themes or coherent character motivation or telling a story that brings you kind of full circle and an emotional catharsis. All those elements don't work. I will say, though, that the reason this movie confronts us with that question of what is a good movie is because when I saw it in the theater, I was rapt. The whole time I watched it, I could not take my eyes off the screen. I couldn't believe what I was watching in a way that transcended irony. It wasn't strictly speaking an ironic viewing experience. Yes, I laughed at things that maybe I wasn't supposed to laugh at, but I was sincerely in the movie's grip. I was where is this going? I want to know where this, it's like the Rick and Morty episode where they watch the commercial of Ants in My Eyes Johnson and he's in the car and Rick's no, Morty, let's keep watching. That's how I felt. I felt like I was in that moment basically. And just every new plot development, every new insane revelation had me what is happening? Where is this going? And I walked to the theater just and it's funny because I had the almost exact opposite reaction of Kirk, where my least favorite thing was her not killing him and then him killing himself, because it felt like such a cop-out. It's like, oh, okay, of course we like, everything has to be nice, everything has to have a happy ending, we can't have her follow through with this horrible plan, like whatever. I felt like I was cheated out of it a little bit. But like, to me, like the appeal of this movie is summed up in the scene where Naomi Watts has gotten the gun and she's doing target practice, and you hear the voiceover, plywood is only slightly thicker than the human skull. And you hear like that cutesy Hallmark score in the background. That is a moment I have never seen in another movie, because that sentence, plywood is only slightly thicker than the human skull, is horrifying. It's something a serial killer would say. But it's this cute character we're supposed to miss, that was the son she loved, saying this in her ear, as this grieving woman is aiming a rifle at a target. And there's something about that that's so like this movie at its core has an idea that is like, it's so sad and it's so fucked up. Like this movie is like so like twisted if you think about it. Just this idea of this woman, this poor woman who can't get her life together, who's entirely dependent on her son, who trusts her son more than herself. And her son is like smart for a kid, which is probably not that smart in the grand scheme of things, but she just defers to him for everything. Now left with nothing, and is going to defer to this childlike desire for vengeance because that's all she can do. It's like, well, that's what my son would have done. It must be the right thing. And there's something I think that's very like, there's something very creepy about this movie. Like there's something to me that's very unsettling about it. And I said last week, like, oh, you take the same screenplay and give it to the Coen brothers and it'd be a masterpiece. And I was being a little bit facetious, but I think that's also kind of wrong and kind of missing the point of what makes this movie interesting is that like, well, yes, you can imagine better versions of this story. You can imagine more dark versions of the story, more twisted versions, a more internally consistent version of the story. But like, it wouldn't have the same effect, because I think the key to this movie's appeal for me is the fact that it marries this tone, this what I would describe as like a Hallmark movie. It feels like a Hallmark movie, but there's this incredible malignant heart to it. There's this incredible darkness to it. And there's something about that that's very disturbing. It feels almost like a nightmare where you're playing out this nice scene where you're having a picnic and your dog's there and you're petting your dog, but there's this sense of just foreboding evil just out of frame. Or a person will say something that doesn't quite fit. They'll say something really disgusting and vulgar. And they'll be like, what the hell? Like, where did that come from? And that's the feeling this movie gives me. And I find it really compelling. Like, I think this movie is incredibly watchable and incredibly, like, compelling moment to moment. Like, I think, like, even now watching it again, I'm just like, oh my God, what is she doing? As far as the things that just work unironically, which aren't that many, or just work in a conventional sense, they're just like good cinematic moments. They're pretty few and far between. I think Naomi Watts is actually really good. I think she really does the best with that script. I really believe her. I believe her pain. I believe her grief. I believe her just being overwhelmed. And also, like, I think the sequence where the plan is starting to come together and she's starting to like put things together is a pretty good, like, 15-minute stretch. Like, that's a pretty good, like, in a different context, that might be a good movie. It might have come out of a better movie. And also, I think that we can develop a Mulholland Drive-esque reading of this movie if we really try. I think there's the pieces there, guys. I think we have them. I was thinking about it as I watched it, and I'm like, I think there's something about it. There's something I can't quite. The things like the fact that, okay, so this woman is overwhelmed and can't take care of her kids, right? She's dependent on her son, and her son dies. At the same time, she discovers this horrible evil next door. I would suggest that the neighbor next door and the daughter are invented, made-up characters from her psyche, because she has to project her own inadequacy, her own failings as a mother onto this evil man. Like, okay, I have failed as a mother, and she's so mad that she let her son die, whether or not it's actually true. But basically, she's failed as a mother, her son died, and she despises herself. So she conjures this avatar of just pure evil in Dean Norris, who has no real personality, no real identifying features. He's just evil. And he's doing the worst thing a person can do, which is, abuse a child in whatever way that ends up being. And again, that child too is totally anonymous. She has no defining traits. It doesn't even look like there's no bruises we ever see. They're only referred to. It's just like she is a symbol of the child she could have had, the innocence that she lost. And this is the side of evil. And also, bear in mind, remember the scene early in the movie what is the relationship like between Henry and his mother? It is very weird. It is very familiar. It feels more like a husband and wife than a mother and son. There's a scene of them lying in bed together. And this is shortly after he discovers the neighbor abusing the daughter. I feel like this is a classic case of projection, of putting out your most filthy, most depraved, most shameful thoughts onto an other and assigning it to them. And hating herself so much she has to kill him, but not even being able to accept that hatred. So projecting it onto your son. It's not being able to take responsibility for any of these things inside you. And yeah, that's my that's my initial take. Yeah. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that would bear out. I mean, and again, I want to say, to be clear, I do not think that Greg Hurwitz or whatever and Colin Trevorrow intended that by any means. But I think there's a lot of, let's just say, there's a lot of psychology going on in this movie. I think Greg Hurwitz was working out a lot of stuff in this script.
I like that idea, Tony, and I'll defend it a little by a couple things. Is one, I will agree, it is a metaphorical, melodramatic piece about what it is to grieve and what it means to, when you grieve, to realize that what you're grieving only reflects your own inadequacies, right? Mm-hmm. But I think what you're saying is correct, is that there's a real sadness behind every character that's not just obvious. Like, I think it's one line where the mom jokes about how the husband or the dad of Henry and his brother ran off and left him alone. It is one line, and she's like, oh, you're just going to leave me and go out like, that guy. Sarah Silverman's character is like an alcoholic, and she always jokes about being stuck and like how she lost all this money, right? The diners is the saddest thing. There's this weird gun store in this town, and the way they talk about it's like there's this criminal plot happening behind.
Dominic,
if you just name it. But I think, and then I think the neighbor, right? He does have a character, though, at least in the beginning, which is orderly and which is annoyingly neighborly. Reminded me of that scene in A Serious Man, where he's talking about the lawn, right? And how your lawn needs to be cut.
The poplar.
So he's a guy who's always within the lines, but it's not until the second half that all of a sudden we get these more alarming notices. But I like that, and I will say the only problem I have now with Tony's thing, though, and this is a problem I have with the film, is we're too much in Henry's point of view in the first half, or at least up until he dies. I think if it worked from the little brother, it would actually improve and give Tony's thing even more weight.
If it was from the little brother's perspective more?
Just a little bit more. I think Henry's perspective not only brings it down in like the classical sense of how we're judging this movie, but it brings down any fun of some of these theorizing a little bit.
One last thing I remembered when you were bringing up the Sarah Silverman character too, speaking of the like projected incestuous feelings, like their weird scene in the hospital where he's like, and we've always kind of had a thing. And then she gives him a kiss. It's like really bizarre, but she is like another version of her. She works in the same place. She's drinking and anyway, that was,
also final two is Naomi Watts has no interest in that like handsome doctor who just pops up out of nowhere and disappears at the end.
I think that the whole Hallmark movie tone too could be read as like she's watched so many Hallmark movies and this is her mind friendly trying to imagine what a good family would be like. That's how she understands family, is through movies, and these cheesy movies with like the hot doctor or Colin Farrell from Killing of a Sacred Deer, your choice, coming and saving her. But she can't quite go with it because reality isn't that nice. It isn't that convenient. Anyway, that was it. That was the final bow on my reading of this movie.
And right there.
How about this reading though? Maybe Henry was a miscarriage.
Oh.
And he's kind of a visage of her hopes and dreams for her other son, who perhaps might be developmentally delayed. I mean, he does wear glasses. So, and, it even like, maybe there was like kind of this forced kind of surrealism with he's crawling on the ground in the hospital, and then he just dies in a heap.
This brutal death scene.
I mean, that could be a reading too. I don't know. There is something. The thing that it comes down to for me is intent, right? I think I'm big on that. I'm big on the idea is like, are we trying to see a Basquiat in a pile of dog shit, or is this actually something that was purposefully, mindfully crafted to evoke those sensations? And I don't think so. And I know, Tony, you conceded that. So that's where it falls. But it's kind of like, you're looking in a window, you're a peeping Tom, and you're seeing like two virgins trying to have sex by like running at each other and bumping genitals. And you're like, you're kind of amused, right?
Kirk, why are you spying on me?
Oh, well, sorry. Yeah. You're amused, but at the same time, there's a sadness. And I feel a sadness for this writer. I feel a sadness for how he lacked in capacity to pull even a C-rate movie out. But I don't know. There is something there where it's like he killed the main character in the second act. That takes some balls, definitely. And there are some other choices that are quite interesting that seem somewhat purposeful, but overall, it just seems like he bit off more than he could chew, and it could work, I think. You say it wouldn't work with like a Coen Brothers, or I don't know, maybe like, who's the guy who did The Witch?
Robert Eggers.
Yeah, why not throw it to him and have like those like Inception style sounds throughout, and like, I don't know, I'd like it.
That would be a better movie. I agree, but I think that like for me, this movie's unique charm comes from that incompetence. It comes from that, like, these pieces that just don't go together creates to me that feeling of like eeriness, that feeling of like hauntingness, that feeling of like the cutesy and the horrifying just next to each other, which again, I doubt was on purpose. I doubt that was in their mind, but like, that's the feeling I get when I watch that movie. And it's a feeling I don't think any other movie has really given me in that same way.
Like Naomi Watts playing Gears of War 4 or whatever, like chopping someone's head off with a chainsaw. Meanwhile, Henry's bothering her about the taxes. She's like, hold on, I just got to level up on these bastards. That encapsulates, that can't not be intentional. That can't not be, there's that moment alone, I don't know. There's something very powerful there. I would say you don't have to go very far. You don't have to read between the lines to get what kind of a theme of the movie is. And I think it is interesting. I think there is something worthwhile about it. It has I don't think they land the plane. But clearly, right, we start with Henry giving his speech, right, that immediately makes you kind of hate him because it's such a perfect little prepared speech about how, right, what is our legacy? And it's all in vain, really, to plan for our legacy, right? Because really what our life is about the kind of the moment-to-moment experiences of each other, right? Something like that. Now, Henry doesn't follow his own advice, right? At the prospect of his death, he comes up with, right, this plan, to take vengeance, right? Or not vengeance, but, a pursuit of some kind of justice. That, okay, maybe justified in its own way or something, but obviously it's over the top. And Naomi Watts eventually realizes, and it's kind of about her journey of, it's bizarre. It's kind of a reversal. You'd expect this to be a story about, a parent and a child, where the child has to somehow overcome, right, their parents and realize that their parents were only people too. Your parent is not a god. You can kind of move past that and make your own decisions. That seems to be kind of like what the movie is kind of trying to say, right? That it's her journey of finding herself. Now, it's weird that in the first place, she would basically be, mothered by her own son, so to speak. But there's a kind of a weird, there's just a cool kind of just oddness in that. Once you've accepted this boy genius sort of setup, then you're following it from there. What if this boy died, right? What if an ordinary person like us, lived with such a person? Would we be similar, right? And in that case, there is this weird reversal of roles. And in that case, too, a similar thing would have to happen where you would have to somehow overcome, your attachment or be able to imagine your own, code of ethics that isn't based on this role model figure, this more powerful or more excellent figure. So there's something kind of interesting there. I don't know what it means then, at the end.
Mhm.
I don't know what it means then, for Dean Norris to die. I don't know what it means then to adopt the other girl. But there's something kind of interesting there. I don't know. And mostly I admire it for its kind of its balls, its gutsiness, But, I don't know.
Yeah, Connor, in that version of the movie, maybe directed by one of these more competent filmmakers, I think the ending then would not have him die. We would have to just sit with the knowledge that that's going on, and there's nothing we can do about it, right? And that would be kind of horrifying in its own way, but it'd be a very different movie. And I think when I first saw it, that's what I was wishing for. I'm like, man, I wish I could see that movie. But I've come to appreciate, like, this is its own weird, misshapen thing.
Isn't there something fascinating about how Henry is able to like perform well on the stock market? He's able to earn a lot of money. So her mom, if she wanted, could just write these children's picture books. But isn't there something fascinating about how, despite all that, she still drives like the shitty truck, and she still decides to go to work at a job she obviously doesn't like.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something there to your reading. Is this a la, Mark Fisher, capitalist realism, that we have to work,
Well, her identity is bound up in her work. A mom
Yeah.
works. A mom works and supports her kids, and it's like she can't let herself. Part of it too is like her identity is bound up in her kids, and it can't be her own person. And that's kind of her arc, I guess, right? When she decides not to kill him, like, I'm no longer going to defer to my dead son. I'm going to exercise my own.
So her like freedom before that is work and alcohol. She'll drink with Silverman in the middle of the day. It's a great example.
And Gears of War.
Yeah. Oh, and Gears of War, yeah. So childish things, and then the vices of being an adult.
Maybe she thinks if I quit work, all I would do is drink and play Gears of War. She needs that to keep her honest, which I can respect. I'm like, I get it. I understand that. All right, you guys got any final thoughts, or do you want to go into the voting?
I'll just vote.
The Sarah Silverman thing just sticks in my head. That's just such a weird.
It's
Such a
really
huge
weird.
tattoo.
It's really strange. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen like an adult kiss someone like that
On the lip.
under the age of majority in a movie before. Like, I'm trying to think how that was on set.
Kristen
Like, Sarah
Stewart.
Silverman, like- what?
Or no, not Kristen Stewart. Kirsten Dunst. Interview with the Vampire.
Okay. I haven't.
Only
I
other one.
only saw the first half, so maybe it was, or first few acts or scenes. Anyways, yes, I wanted to. I appreciate what Tony's saying, and there is something unsettling about it. I guess my brain is just wired to kind of analyze the movie, the components of the writing, and part of me does think that this writer was dared by his drinking buddy to make kind of a mockery, a film that's like an amalgam of all the worst tropes in family movies, and then try to turn it on its side. Because when you really examine it, when you look closely at it, the whole basis of the second act can't even have occurred. He is immediately rushed to the hospital, operated on, and dies in the hospital. How would he have known that he was going to die, so that Naomi Watts was going to have to undertake the mission on his behalf? That's the part that confuses me the most, maybe. And so part of me wonders if this truly was intentionally bad, but in such a stealthy way that in 20 years' time, he's going to come out and he's going to say, and there's going to be a revival, like a Troll 2 revival. But I don't know. Either way, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe when I'm a father drinking wine and playing Gears of War in 5 years, I'll vote yes for this. But for now, it's a soft no. Soft, very soft.
You'll need it. You'll realize you'll need it by then, Kirk.
Yeah.
Can I weigh in? So I'm going to, this movie definitely, it touched me. Let's put it that way.
Dean Norris touched you?
Not like that. Maybe it was more like Sarah Silverman, I don't know.
That's the okay kind of child abuse.
Yeah.
low cut garbanzo flaunter. Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of speechless.
That's a deep cut. Wow.
I think there's something here where in the film itself, there's a kind of message for us in that, there's the scene where they read the picture book and then Henry says something like, "It was well told." And then she's like, "Don't be so negative. Like, don't be so critical of it. People worked really hard on this." I think it's telling us not to be so critical, to open up and to accept, right, the things we see in this wonderful and strange world of ours. And I would say that this is definitely something I would show to someone else. I think this definitely is worthy of having a kind of its cult revival. Such a strange artifact. I know this may not be totally in the spirit of the 706, but on the basis of my enjoyment and also my rapt watching of it, as Tony described, I had a similar reaction. I'm going to give it a yes.
All right.
Connor puts me in a weird position because I feel like if I would have went second, I would have given it an instant yes for similar reasons. Like Connor, like Tony, as I was watching it, I was really interested and actually really fascinated. And like I said in the beginning, I still think this is one of the most bold and creative American films I've seen in years. And I like Tony's little reading of it. I have a reputation for giving Tony no's to everything.
No, please don't.
Jack Nicholson
I didn't see this coming. I'm not sure if I would have, but hey, my vote's in. It's locked
I will
in.
say
coming back out.
I think in about 10 years, when Tony's kid is in college, he's going to be talking about how he watched this in the dorm room. And I'm going to let those kids vote yes. But for now, I'll let Kirk off the hook. I say no.
Oh, that was mean. That was mean.
I was really torn.
That was
you may not like this, but your kids are going to love it.
Yeah. I actually enjoyed it. If you would have said no, I would have said yes. It needed one yes at least.
Wow. That's interesting. I didn't think of the meta element of like the order of asking you guys will increase the likelihood of it getting in or not. Like you would have given it the yes if I didn't get it. That's interesting. I gotta say, went over better than I expected. I kind of thought this was going to be like a Barney situation, but I'm glad we were able to get a little chin stroking going over this one.
That was a fun episode.
And so let's move on to our next segment, where they pitch movies to me to watch next week. So why don't who would have gone least recently then?
Connor.
I believe it's me.
Okay, then who do you want to go first?
I choose to go last, and I nominate Anthony to present his movie first. If you're ready, Anthony, you don't have to.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'll go. So I was kind of torn now, again, trying to decide between a sort of classic choice we all should discuss or a more interesting one. So I think my thinking here is we've watched a lot of movies. Tony's watched a lot of movies. I think it's time we ask how those movies have affected us. I'm going to nominate a documentary by Mr. Adam Curtis called Bitter Lake from 2015.
Wow.
So it's only 2 hours and 17 minutes, 27 minutes, I think. Yeah, 2 hours and 17 minutes. But it's a film that sort of looks at the sort of narratives the West has created that have simplified the conflicts of the sort of Middle East and have led to ideas of terror in our own lives to perpetuate us as sort of powerless subjects. It's a very interesting movie. And, this has turned into the Adam Curtis fan club. So I think it's time we keep that going.
We would. This would be the only podcast on earth that would watch The Book of Henry and then Bitter Lake. That would be the only one. Okay.
Let's see here. So I have one that I've kind of been holding on to that I've really wanted to watch, but I don't know if Tony would pick it. One of my favorite movies, of the last 15, 20 years was Sideways, 2004, directed by Alexander Payne. He also did Nebraska. I think he did About Schmidt too.
Yeah.
And The Descendants. It's actually got a pretty good track record. This is a movie about two friends who go on a bachelor trip to wine country in southern well, I guess it's not Northern California, but it's not exactly. Is this what would you call it, Anthony? Like Solvang, Santa Barbara area.
Yeah.
SoCal, close
SoCal.
enough. Anyways, I love this movie. I think there's a lot of humanity on display. I think that it's criminal that it's Thomas Hayden Church, right? That's his name? Yeah. I think it's criminal that he was not propelled to stardom, A-list stardom after this. He gives an Oscar-worthy performance, as does Paul Giamatti. You got Virginia Madsen and Sandra Oh. It's an all-star cast. It's a very kind of a movie that follows a forlorn figure kind of with some ghosts in his past, and it's very artful. There's a lot of scenes that you just kind of, you can appreciate for their contrast and the humor, the dry humor that kind of imbues it all. So fun movie, very emotional ultimately, and that's what I connect with, are emotional movies that have a little bit of zing to them. So Sideways.
And as for me, I would like to nominate With Nil and I, 1987, kind of cult classic film, starring Richard E. Grant, the kind of role that made him famous. Now he's made it all the way to being a terribly boring and generic villain in the latest Star Wars film. This is a cult movie, takes place in fact, I'm told by a Withnail head friend of mine that it takes place on October 2nd, 1969. And it's about kind of the adventure of these two kind of deadbeats. One is a wannabe actor, the other a wannabe writer. And these kind of rootless 20-somethings and the kind of adventure they have in sort of in London and outside of it when they decide to take a little holiday to the country. It's just a classic film, with great characters, great writing, obviously many quotable lines that have become kind of immortalized. But I still think it's definitely worth seeing, definitely worth evaluating for us. I don't know if you guys have seen it or not.
I've not. Okay, so let's. I want to hear some rebuttals here. This is an eclectic bunch. They're three very different flavors. I feel like I got a big Neapolitan carton in front of me, and as one does with Neapolitan, you only eat one flavor. So Connor, you're vanilla. Why don't you make your pick?
Vanilla, huh? I would say, With Nil and I is definitely a fun movie, but also obviously it has its kind of deeper themes. I mean, I think mostly it's a fun romp. I would say it's, maybe not quite as cerebral as Adam Curtis's films, but I think there's definitely plenty to chew on. I think it's a nice middle ground of kind of an entertaining and an interesting movie. Yeah, I think it's, just kind of worth watching. I can't speak to either of the other films because I haven't seen them. Obviously, I like Adam Curtis. I'm not sure I would call myself a fan. I find his documentaries definitely interesting. I always have something to say about them. So I'd be curious to, to take it on the podcast. And I don't know Sideways.
Kirk?
Let's see. Well, Connor, I can't believe you're nominating Spice World, the prequel here.
Yes. Okay. I forgot to mention, of course.
This
kind
is
of coming full circle.
Yeah. Maybe a little more misshapen than a circle, but these sound interesting. I never finished Hypernormalization. As you predicted, it would take me 8 years, and it's still only a month or two. I should get back to it. I'm on the Gaddafi part, or a little past that, but it's interesting. He's got some good ideas. I don't know in terms of like theatrics, like are his documentaries, isn't it all like secondary footage? And I don't know. It's hard to say. Like it's not like a Werner Herzog situation. It's more of kind of we're going to throw the ideas at the wall and talk about them, which has its own merit and of course will render great discussion. But I think so. I don't know about Connor's either. So I would be down to watch all three, obviously. And I just think mine is, another thing where you can trace, I love movies that place themselves. I always try to figure out where a movie's taking place. For instance, The Book of Henry took place in relatively upstate New York. even though they came out of the Mount Vernon courthouse at the end, which is in Westchester County. So that was a little confusing. But I love how in Sideways, you actually feel like you're going on this journey. You can kind of feel that spatial dimension. And that's an added dimension that you don't get in many films. You get it in certain films like Cannonball Run and I don't know, other movies, Due Date with Robert Downey. Just kidding. Anyways, good movie.
All right, I think Kirk did a good job of the merits and demerits of my own. It is a movie about ideas, so how well those ideas, land is of course an issue in thinking about it. But it's also a documentary, and I don't think we've done a documentary yet, so it could be interesting there. I think there's also something to Connor's own sort of questions about the swage of Adam Curtis and the way he's presenting things. I think there's a realm of the film and documentary style itself that could be worthy enough of unpacking. And I think Connor's film I haven't seen, but if I wanted to see something about the first year of our life in Ridgewood, I just think back. So Kirk's film, Santa Barbara's beautiful, but Alexander Payne just doesn't always sit right with me. And I've seen The Descendants and just could not get into it. So that's all I could say. I don't think I finished it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But,
all right, guys. I've had enough of this roughhousing behaviors. Get it together, folks. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So my thinking is, I've seen Sideways. I remember liking it. That I feel like we were on like a 7-episode stretch of things I've already seen, which is fine. I mean, that probably puts me in a better position to talk about them. But like, I don't know. I kind of want to see something new and surprising and interesting, which leaves me with Nail and I and Bitter Lake. And I'm afraid Anthony kind of had me at hello with this one because I really loved Hypernormalization, which I watched a couple months back now. And as he said, we haven't done a documentary. I think it could present kind of an interesting challenge because, yeah, like we are, there's the film and there's the ideas in the film. And like we kind of have to talk about both and their relationship. And, it is different than talking about a narrative film or even most other kinds of documentaries, more conventional documentaries. So I think it would be a good way to kind of mix things up, which I'm always looking for. And I'm just excited to see it. It's been on my list for a long time. So I'm going to go Bitter Lake.
Yeah, that was a surprise. I threw another throwaway out and I'm surprised. Yeah.
Tony just picks up the trash every time.
Yeah, there's a lot of Book of Henry similarities though, so we have to watch this one first.
Thematic through lines.
Yeah.
Connor, shall we forge an alliance? The other 2 members of this podcast suggested and chose the Book of Henry. Can we really trust them? Should we invoke the 25th Amendment for?
We're getting there. We're getting there, Kirk.
For the Book of Henry.
Stand back and stand by, okay, Kirk? We're getting ready.
Yeah, for real.
I picked the Book of Henry, right?
Simon Killer, Night Moves, Book of Henry. I rest
Barney.
my case.
Wait a minute. Actually, I want to ask Kirk, like, how would you rank those 3 movies? Like, where in your enjoyment?
Well, it's just which pissed me off the least, and I would say, honestly, this movie probably pissed me off the most.
Really?
So then Night Moves, just because of Jesse Eisenberg, got to give him the nod, and then probably Simon Killer. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, like, I'm surprised because this movie, at least, I think has, like, kind of the fun factor. Like, it's so ridiculous that I thought you might enjoy that. Whereas Simon Killer, like, if you're not into it, you're going to hate it.
We should do a Simon Killer Redux. I honestly think it might have grown on me.
I want to watch it again. I haven't seen it since that episode because I have, like, PTSD, but I'm, like, really curious what I think of it now, like, years later. But
my hope would be is that the 3 of us, well, Kirk and I would really love it, right? Connor would still be kind of in the middle of the road, and you would hate it, Tony.
I'd just be really quiet. I'd be really quiet, and then I'd just be like, it didn't do it for me.
Yeah. Inside, you'd have like this moral like hatred of yourself for ever liking it in the first place.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's do that. So that's the 50th episode. Spectacular.
Yeah, well, this is what, 42? I think we're on 42.
We're in there, guys.
Well, thanks for listening as always, and I'll have what she's having.